Hello, my name is Dylan. I got diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma on March 11th, and just want to talk about how that's been. So, I'm joined here with my brother. He'll introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Daniel. I'm Dylan's identical twin brother. We are completely identical. Yeah, we're not fraternal, we're identical, even though it doesn't look like it
Yeah,
right
because
now.
I'm bald. And even before whatever, people would say we didn't look, some people would say we didn't look similar. But anyway, so yeah, let's start at just the beginning. At some point in time, I'm not really sure when, I just developed a weird bump on my rib. It was painless. It was kind of hard. At first, I thought it was just part of my rib, like just I always had a weird bump on my rib, and I thought maybe it was always there. Later, I thought, how would I just now notice that I have a really weird and large bump on my rib? So, at a Chinese buffet, I told my mom, hey, you know, there's a really weird bump on my rib, and I think we should get it checked out. So, later we went to a dermatologist, and they said, oh, you know, it just looks like it's a lipoma,
Mhm.
something very minor. It's not cancer, so you're gonna be put on a waiting list near the end because it's not urgent.
Yeah, they told him. So first he went and asked them like, "Hey, when is my surgery gonna be?" And they're like, "Oh, well, cancer patients have priority, so you go last." At the time they had no reason to believe that it was cancer, but with our hindsight, it's kind of funny that they told us, "Oh, cancer patients have priority. You go last." It's a little unfortunate.
Yeah, I don't really blame them because
Yeah.
Anyway, so
And that was in I think November when we first got to the dermatologist to have it checked out.
yeah,
It was November.
and then months later, I even wrote the date of the surgery so I would remember, so it's still up here behind the camera. It's February 12th at 8:30 a.m. That would be the day that they would remove what they believed at first was a lipoma. They said this is just a lipoma or a cyst, something of the sort, probably not cancerous, and we're only removing it just because it's pretty large. At that point, it was actually over 4 centimeters. So, from the time that we called, from the first, I guess, consultation to the actual surgery, it had been about 3 months. So that's how much time had passed. So, time of the surgery, I had to miss my mechanics of materials lab, but I later made it up. Not that it necessarily mattered, but I did. And so I was at the surgery, and the I won't go into the super details, but the main point is that first, the surgeon cut in, and he didn't know exactly what he was looking, so he cut in even more, and a bunch of liquid actually splashed on his face. And yeah, I mean, they found a hematoma at the bottom of that. There was an insane amount of bleeding. They took two doctors to stop it, and they removed this weird, what the doctor first thought was fat tissue. It was a very small amount. It was like a string almost.
Yeah, our mom described because she was in the
She was watching.
operating. Yeah, she was watching, and she described it as like egg yolk almost. So it's kind of what it looked like.
Yeah. So I was laying down while they were cutting. There was local anesthetic, not general anesthetic. And when I finally got up, I looked at my mom, and she had like her hands. on her head and had a really scared look on her face. But they used dissolvable stitches, and they said, um, he said, "Oh, it's just a hematoma. That's all it was." And then my mom asked him, "Hey, could this be cancer?" And he said, "No." He said distinctly, "No. Cancer doesn't act this way." So just in case, just to be sure, they sent some of the hematoma and that weird piece of fat tissue to a lab. Okay. So I went home, made up my lab. 2 days later, I had a what is it? I had a probability and statistics exam coming up, like a few days later, too. Yeah, that was it for now.
Yeah, we had thought that, there's not much to worry about, before the surgery, I am going into the medical field. I, saw all sorts of stuff, especially like pimple popper, whatever, it's a lipoma. It's probably a lipoma. It's definitely not cancer. It was almost like, of course that couldn't happen to us. Why would that happen to us, Like it's so rare. Of course it can't be us. Why would it be us? But so I was like, there's no way this is anything. We even bought tickets to a cruise in May.
Because the doctor said no,
Yeah.
it's like cancer doesn't behave this way. This was a hematoma.
Yeah. So we were like totally like, okay, so we're good. Like the doctor doesn't think it's cancer. Why would he say that if he didn't know for sure? So we kind of were like, okay, great. Thank God it wasn't anything crazy. That was kind of a weird surgery with the whole explosion. But it's done now. We can just move on from this.
So after the surgery, time passed. I continued my life like normal, and I'll never forget. I remember my mom was sitting on a couch, and she looked up to me and smiled and said, "Well, I haven't heard anything from the dermatology office, so it must mean everything's okay and your lab is like went back negative, everything negative." So flash forward to March 10th. That was my thermodynamics exam. I had a few other classes. I went to work. Yeah, I went to work at my university and whatever. I later got a 94 on that thermodynamics exam. I mean, I was totally,
Yeah, very important right now about the
yeah,
grade of his, you know,
exam.
exam.
Yeah. I did well. I was perfectly fine. I even was messaging people, whatever. I was looking at images of seals, my favorite animal, whatever. I was living life normally. And then March 11th, the birthday of Hopkins from Animal Crossing. I woke up to the sound of my mother screaming. I first thought she was in the bathroom screaming. Knew she was probably on the phone. I had no idea. I mean, I had no idea what was going on. I just heard her screaming. I first thought, okay, either someone has drained their bank account, or someone has one of our someone got into a car accident. Maybe my dad, our dad works started work pretty early. There was my mom, my grandma is there. I knew my brother was probably there because he didn't have school later. So I thought maybe my dad got into a really bad car accident. And I thought, you know what? It's probably something very silly, maybe some misunderstanding.
I was I was getting up for school. I actually had an interview that day for a it was like a teaching job at my university. So I got up. It was like 7 in the morning. I went to the bathroom to go brush my teeth, and as I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, I hear my mom, like, almost like in an incredibly panicked voice, be like, oh my god, what is it?" And I heard her in my grandma's room, and I thought something happened to my grandma. So I remember, like, I was like, oh my god, like I dropped that toothbrush in the sink, when I ran in there, and then I saw, my grandma was fine. She was in the bed, like looking at my mom, like, what the hell is going on? And I saw my mom on the phone, and then she says it's cancer. And I was like, what? Who has cancer? Because I already forgot about this surgery that he had a month ago. It was already, in the past already, something that I had already completely forgotten about. And I was like, I thought in my mind, this must be someone in our family who has cancer, but not Dylan. And, well, I was like, Mom, who has cancer? Who? And she said, Dylan. And I was like, like, that's not what I was expecting to hear this morning. So, I was in complete shock. I didn't know what to do. And maybe in a foolish manner, I went right over to Dylan's room. I opened the door, and I think you were already up, and you're like, what's going on? And I said, Dylan, you have cancer. And yeah, that's how it all went down.
Yeah, there's actually more to this little moment. So he went in there, and I first thought like, of course this happens to me, but I wasn't even that worried. I thought like it. I guess it just hadn't set in. Like I think that's it. Like I can't explain. Like I was upset, and I knew it was probably real, but I wasn't that panicked, and I think there's no other explanation other than just I didn't fully it didn't it hadn't set in. So I remember my mom walked up to me and she like hugged to me and she's like, "You're gonna fight this." And I mean, I was like, ah, like I don't even know like what this is. Like, is it terminal? Like, if
Mhm.
it's terminal, what is there to fight?
Right.
So the first thing I wanted to know is, okay, well, what cancer is this? Because I'm not gonna say like I'm some like cancer expert. I'm not going into the medical field, but I know a little bit. I know that can like every cancer is completely different. There's a bunch of different kinds. There's not like one cure to all of them. All of them are completely different. So I wanted to know first thing, okay, well, what cancer is this? Is it pancreatic cancer? Is it Hodgkin's lymphoma? Whatever. But okay, so first thing, my mom, I don't think she first heard it was cancer, and then I mean nothing else, you know. But they probably told her what it was. So she said some sort of sarcoidosis, something.
I think she said sarcoidosis. I think that's what you told me.
Yeah. So I looked that up and it said this isn't cancer, it's just some disease. I thought, well, what's going on here? This is a disease and I was told I have cancer. So I said, okay, well, first figure out what kind this was. So my mom called a few more people and I think one more person and they told her what it was and she wrote it down and it was called Ewing sarcoma. Now, I heard of Ewing. I knew that there was some guy in middle school, high school name with the last name Ewing. But sarcoma, I'd probably heard of the word, and I figured, okay, well, that has something to do with cancer, but I didn't really know what it meant. So, without looking at what kind of cancer it was, the first thing I looked up was Ewing sarcoma. I ran to that like I have a like nightstand right there. My iPad was on there, it was charging. I ran up to it. The first I went to Safari. The first thing I looked up was Ewing sarcoma survival rate, and of course the stupid AI thing came up, and whatever it told me was wrong. But here's what it told me. It said it's between like 80% and 77%, and I saw 77%, and there's a balloon here.
Balloon floating through the.
There's a balloon I was given as a little
It keeps
something.
like spinning
It's like
around.
spinning around.
Like it was completely still before the video, but now it's
It's like bouncing
spinning
around.
around.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Anyway, back to me thinking I'm gonna die. So I saw 77 and I remember like I almost fell. Like I put my elbows on the nightstand. And I knew that that wasn't horrible, but that wasn't great. So like I didn't know what to do. I had class. I had mechanics of materials and then whatever class it was Tuesday. So I had, oh yeah, dynamics. I had what was it? I had a communications class and then I had work. So I mean I had a packed day. Of course it happened on Tuesday is my most busiest day. So of course it happened on that day.
And I it was the day that I had that interview. I didn't get the job. I got another job, so don't worry, I'm not unemployed. I have two jobs right now. But um yeah, I was like, I have to go to this interview, and you know, cuz like the way we've been raised, it's kind of like, you put everything, you put, school and your goal, your career first, and everything else, if you don't get a good education and a good career, might as well not even have a life. So, I mean, no one told us that, but that's kind of, at least in me and his psyche,
Culture.
yeah, psyche, that like, you know, like it's ingrained in our psyche almost that unfortunately, like school and work and performance is more important than life. And we know that's not true, and no one told us that. But that's just kind of how, it was kind of worked into us. So me and him both kind of like went through that. Obviously, we were still genuinely upset, but with this, like, grind mindset, we were like, I still had to go to my interview, I still had to go to class, no one was going to stop for me and or my brother, um I was still gonna, fail all my classes if I didn't study, if I didn't turn stuff in, if I didn't go to that interview, I wasn't gonna get a job, I wasn't gonna get paid. So I was like, I have to go to this interview, they're not gonna reschedule for me even if I told them my brother has cancer. So I was like, Dylan, I have to go, which is shitty. But you know so that's what it was. I went to the interview, and I left my brother. um I was
It's
driving to
okay.
school and I was like, what the hell? I can't believe I can't believe this is happening to him, you know.
So my brother went to his interview. I mean, I didn't want to um I thought, I mean, my mom would need to find something. Like I didn't even know how I would be able to help her. I mean, I didn't know what I would be able to do. I didn't know how, like, the reason that I'd waited so long to say anything was mainly because of I knew that like American healthcare and how expensive, if something like this happens, how expensive it is. And I just thought, like, my God, like, if I say, oh, something's wrong, like, what can of worms am I opening here? Like, how much is it gonna cost?
Yeah, not just treating it, but the diagnosis, the imaging, everything.
Mm.
It's, and like, when you go to the doctor and they tell you nothing's wrong, you still have to pay. And it's like, then you're thinking like, why did I do that? I just wasted a bunch of money for nothing. So it's like, why even, you know, go into that when you don't know for sure? So it's like, but that's wrong. It shouldn't be that way, but that's how it is.
Yeah. So, yeah. March, we'll actually I'll touch on that topic of the not saying anything about the, bump, and maybe later in this video, later in this video or in other videos. But yeah, so okay, I was still at home. I got told I had cancer. Well, I thought, my God, I have classes to go to and I have to go to work. And so I thought, like, I mean, if I die, then I die. But if I don't die, then I have all these classes. Then I'll just have all these things that piled up, and it'll be for nothing. So I went.
And also, you'd have to call and email people, and that doesn't sound exciting,
Yeah,
telling them you have cancer. So, He just thought, it would be better to just not tell anyone because
Yeah.
that would be too embarrassing or
Yeah.
anxiety
At
inducing.
first, I wasn't embarrassed that I had cancer. Like, I wasn't like, I didn't think cancer was so, I didn't think it was, I knew it wasn't my fault. And later I'll explain. But, like, I knew, like, this, did I mean, like, it wasn't something I did, or it's not the cancer that was embarrassing. It was the fact that I'm like, I would have to email my professors like, "Oh, I have this little disease, and I
That's
need
not
you
the
to."
case, and we don't. And I know he doesn't think people who do tell people that they have cancer, he doesn't see them in that way. It's just kind of the way that the self-criticalness, beating yourself up and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I just went to school, and I went to my classes, and the whole time I just felt this like I don't know, like someone shoved a brick in my head. Like it's just this impending sense of like that's it. I would always get to my classes early, and I spent all that time just looking stuff up. And I like looked on Wikipedia, and now I look back and whatever I highlighted was not even sourced. But it said that for Ewing sarcoma, um, like almost everyone who gets it asymptomatic, when they're diagnosed, is like has metastatic disease. And this what there's no source attached to this. In fact, it's a citation needed. So I don't know where exactly that was from, and that's not what I heard. I'd never heard that anywhere else. So I don't know who exactly wrote that. But what is the case is whatever the AI told me was wrong, or at the very least not the general case. So let's talk about Ewing sarcoma survival rates. So when let's just talk about survival rates first. So this was what I was looking up while I was in you know in before my class would start. This was what was the only thing that really like that's the first thing I needed to know. So 5 year survival rate is not, oh, in 5 years you're gonna die. It's not the result, it's just a metric.
It's looking at like someone got diagnosed 5 years later, are they alive, yes or no?
Exactly. What's the
So
chance of
yeah,
that?
like will like what is the chance that this person will be alive in 5 years?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, for example, stage 1 breast cancer usually has a 5 year survival rate of around, I think it was 90 something percent. So, if someone is diagnosed with stage 1 breast cancer, regardless of the age groups and the other groups they may be in, for example, race and other things, if it's stage 1, all across the board, 5 year survival rate is around 90%. Let's look at something like pancreatic cancer. Well, for stage 1, the 5 year survival rate is around 14%. So 14% of people diagnosed with stage 1 pancreatic cancer survive, the rest of them do not after 5 years.
Mhm.
So now let's look at Ewing sarcoma. Generally, all across whatever is going on, I believe it would just state it as being a 70% 5 year survival rate. Now, that's just all across the board. There's, I guess, two big things that control the survival rate for Ewing sarcoma specifically. So that would be age, and then of course, stage. For Ewing sarcoma, the younger a person is, actually, the better their chances of survival are. The average age to be diagnosed is around 15. So this is actually a pediatric cancer, and I'll talk more about that later. So people diagnosed between 0 and 15, they generally have around a 70% survival rate. So
And
what it
that's just on age alone,
Yeah,
nothing else.
so regardless of staging. But for people who are diagnosed after 15, the survival rate is around 58%. So 58% of basically teenagers and young adults.
So half of teenagers diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma end up passing away after
Yeah,
5 years.
a little less than half. So age is kind of an important factor. Now, I got diagnosed at 19, so that put me in the 58% just on age alone. Now, another factor this makes things completely different is how far it is spread. When I was just looking up about Ewing sarcoma survival rates for the stages, it was listed as local, regional, and distant. And generally, it went from local, meaning that it's just where it started, is about 80 something percent. Now, for local, it told me that it was around 70%, but by the time that it was distant, it was between 15 and 34%
So really, really low.
survival rate. So that's what I was looking up. The first thing that I was looking up was survival rate. So I had no symptoms. What I later learned for cancer, and I'll talk about this more in other videos, is it doesn't symptoms are not a good indicator of exactly what your staging is for cancer. So I just knew, of course, well, okay, I have cancer, I have this cancer. Well, I hope it's local,
Yeah.
and that's all I wanted. So now let's actually talk about what Ewing sarcoma is. What is this disease? So this is when I finally started reading into it. Ewing sarcoma is a rare and aggressive pediatric bone cancer. So it's usually found in one of the limbs. More rarely, it's found in the ribs or the hips or the pelvis, but it can really be found in any bone. But more common,
It's usually in the long bone,
yeah,
so this part or in the leg.
yeah. For example, the femur.
Hmm.
And when I was looking at cases, generally speaking, if it was on a limb, it would be amputated, and if it was found on the ribs would be removed. So it was found on my rib, which doesn't really give me that much comfort because in the end, well, if the cancer is in my arm, they can always cut off my arm, they can't cut off my torso. So I guess some relief was that I wouldn't have, there was currently no risk of my limbs being removed, but there was no,
Way
if,
of keeping him alive.
yeah, if it
If it
really,
was getting really bad, there was no you know, um, like last resort. I mean, you can't get rid of his entire torso. You can get rid of an arm or a leg. I mean, it would be life changing and extremely difficult, but at least you would be alive. But with the torso, there's not much you can do about that in terms of just amputation.
exactly. And of course, we're not medical professionals, so we don't know exactly. We're just going off of my
Yep.
experience. So I went to school. I just did everything and felt a sense of doom. I looked at people who had this disease and I thought, okay, here's what's going to happen to me. Either two things. Either I'm just going to die soon. In a year, in a couple months, I'm going to die. Or I'm going to spend the next 5 years of my life being miserable and fighting for some chance of hope. And I'm going to be sick and ill, and then I'm just going to die. So that's what I thought. And I would look at, I saw, you know, elderly people, I saw families that, like, people who started families, and I thought, I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm not going to be able to get old. I'm not going to be able to have a family. I'm not going to even have a job. Like, I'm just going to die. Like, I'm going to be a 19-year-old who's going to die. And, like, just like in the, I've always been fascinated with the advances of modern technology, how people live for so long compared to what we did before. But no, just like, I don't know, a caveman or whatever, I'm gonna die when I'm 19. Awesome. So that was my thought process. So I was at work, I was a little bit irritated. if you can imagine, so my brother went up to me and I was like, "What are you doing here?" He's like, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Oh, why would I not be?" And that was it. And then I went
He
home.
was really against telling anyone, and of course it was up to him whether he wanted to. But I thought that maybe it would be good to tell the people around you. And to this day, the only people at his job that knows that he has cancer is his
Yeah,
supervisor. So, you know, all the people, like you had lab partners, right?
yeah,
Did they know?
yeah. I had lab partners, and I would, be like it would be every lab, and they just never saw me again. I
Yeah.
never, and I even had a group project thing going on. They even email, like I first reached out saying, "Hey, let's set up this and this. I'm thinking this for the idea for a project." And then while I was like, I think when I went home after chemo, I checked my first rounds of chemo, which I'll of course get to. I went home and I checked my email and I saw a response and I was like, I don't know. I didn't have the strength to check. So, yeah. So, I went home after my job and I came home to my mom, my dad, my grandma on both sides and my aunt. And they were all sitting in the living room and they were talking and of course about me. And I could tell that my dad and my grandma, they didn't fully, like, it didn't sink in, just like it didn't for me. And
I was at the time I was there was a club meeting or something that I had to attend. I had to. And so I ended up coming home really, really late at like 8 o'clock. So I wasn't there for that. So that's kind of just how it went.
yeah, and I mean, I don't blame him. I mean, he still needs those things. I mean, he's still in school, and I'm gonna go back to school. Don't you forget it. So everyone was talking, and I mean, we just went over, things. I mean, there wasn't much to say. I mean, I got diagnosed with this thing, and we didn't really know anything yet. I mean, that was just the test, and I mean, my mom was hoping it's just a case of a switched vial, and like it's just someone else's, that sort of thing. And my mom was actually hoping that this is a bone cancer, and my mom was hoping, but it was just on they just cut it open and they only found stuff on the surface. They cut deeper and they only found a hematoma. So my mom thought, my God, like, what if it's just on the surface? I mean, maybe it's not in the bone. And later, a doctor actually called that we know,
It was
and
a family
yeah,
doctor
family,
that didn't have anything to do with Dylan specifically. He was just advising us.
exactly. He called and said, to my mom, you know, it's in the bone. There's no way around this. It's in his rib. But all they do is they remove the ribs, that rib. They don't even really need to replace anything. It's good on its own. And he'll be sick for a while, but he's gonna make it. And, he was halfway correct.
Um, so actually, in my mind, what I was thinking about this was, okay, so this is a bone cancer. Ewing sarcoma is a bone cancer, but it was not in the bone when well, at least they didn't find it in the bone, they found it above his bone. So in my mind, that made me think, okay, well, it was in his bone and then it got out of his bone too. So at that point, it had already either been regional or maybe even distal, distant. Maybe it had already metastasized. And to me, that's what I was really, really worried about, that this was, just the tip of the iceberg, that there was already, you know, this could have been not the original one, it could have been something, that was new. So that's kind of what I had thought at that time, and it was incredibly frightening, to say the least.
Yeah. So, day after we went to bed, it was late at that point. We went to bed. I don't even remember how I slept. I just remember being on the couch everyone going up, and then I don't even remember what happened. In fact, the day after March 12th, I went to school. He took me to school. Well, he drove me, and I don't even remember what happened during that day. I mean, I remember I had a lab. Actually, I do remember, and I remember talking to my lab partners. And I was thinking, my God, I'm gonna have to do all this stuff while I have cancer. Like I have these exams coming up. I like my ADHD. I was struggling with it, and now I have cancer, and like all this stuff going on. Like, how am I gonna handle this? And while I was doing this lab, and the lab was complicated. I mean, there was like all this stuff going on. We needed to go to a bunch of different places. Anyway, it was it was stressful. And under a mind that didn't just get diagnosed with cancer, I would have been okay. But with this, I mean, you know. So anyway, I went home. I don't even remember what happened. But what I do remember is that my mom had booked an oncology appointment with a doctor that I actually didn't end up visiting. So an oncologist, and it's like, are they gonna do all the scans? Are they gonna do all the blood tests? Like everything. And she didn't really know. So I thought, okay, well, I guess this is just a start, and I'm not gonna find anything. So like nothing is gonna be found out today, or like on the day on after tomorrow on March 13th. So on March 13th, I woke up. It turns out I even had an exam. Had an exam. I didn't even know I had it. I thought it would be March 30th. It was not. It was on March 13th. I wrote everywhere that it was March 30th, but it was not. So it was on that
That's why
day.
you gotta check your syllabuses,
Exactly.
guys. Your syllabi.
Yeah.
Gotta check them.
So now from this point on, I will always like write down. I'll have a
But it's okay. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I'll have a little logbook of all the dates. But anyway, it didn't matter in the end. But so I was getting ready to go and actually overheard someone call my mom, and she was talking about what was going on with me and how she even thought it might be, not in the bone or whatever. And I thought, okay, but then I even heard her say, "Okay, will you cancel the appointment?" And okay, what time? And I thought, oh my God, like, did some like herbal remedy place call her and say, "Come visit. We're gonna cure him with kombucha."
Yeah.
No, well, not kombucha is just a regular drink. But anyway, I thought, like, my God, what is happening? Like, who is this? So I finally left. I was taking a shower. Shower. I finally left, and turns out it was actually a doctor in a big hospital nearby that was actually covered by our insurance. Turns out the dermatologist had reached out to a few people, and they all kind of there's a chain of communication that finally ended up at this doctor. He is a pediatric oncologist, and the thing that really made me feel better, this may not make everyone feel better, but he said, "Does he really have Ewing sarcoma? If he does, he needs treatment today." So maybe that wouldn't make everyone feel better, but to me it showed that this was urgent, and he knew that. So the truth is, like, I like March 13th, I went in, I got checked in. There was a lot of things happened. March 14th, I already had a chemotherapy port in. So you may be wondering what a chemo port is. Now, if you've seen Breaking Bad, one of my favorite shows, you would have seen Walter White getting chemotherapy. Well, he got it through an IV in his arm, and he was sitting with a lot of people. Now, this is not enough, basically, for what I was going through. I would need a lot more at a time, much more throughput. and I would also need a bunch of blood work constantly. So they knew, first of all, it would be a hassle, an infection risk, it would ruin my arm, and all of these things. So they knew, okay, what they need is an intravenous line, I think it's called a chemotherapy port. So basically, what it is it's just an implant that sits right below my skin, and then it's basically like a, a little reservoir that's has a little needle, and that's correct connected or plugged in, you could say, directly to a large, I don't know, artery vein right above my heart. So very serious business. Now this one was a power port, which meant not only could chemotherapy drugs go in, but I could also get blood tests from it, which would be great. So that's what I got on actually March 14th. Now March 13th is when the day that I was admitted. I went in there and we knew, actually never really, I think I probably knew it in the back of my mind, but I don't think I fully realized this. I would be immunocompromised. So I wore a mask on my, a medical mask on to the hospital. Doctor said I didn't really need to wear one if I wasn't sick. Um, I didn't feel sick. The point is I felt completely fine. But either way, we went in, we got checked in. Everyone was very, everyone was very nice. Everyone was very compassionate. And finally, I got to see the doctor, and I was very nervous. We got sat in this room. It had a lot of, it had kids' toys and all these things. And you may be wondering why they're kids' toys. Well, this is a pediatric cancer. So despite me being 19, it doesn't really matter what age I am. It's a pediatric cancer, so it's best treated by a team who specializes in pediatric cancers. So that's an important thing. So I was in there, I was waiting for the doctor to come in. And basically here's the rundown. He said he showed the report. I saw it. I saw the cancer cells under a microscope. They were this weird brown color, and he said with 100% certainty, Dylan, you have Ewing sarcoma, and this is you have cancer. Now, he actually pulled up a report that was done, like a research paper that was done about subcutaneous Ewing sarcoma, meaning Ewing sarcoma that was never in the bone, that was simply below the skin. And he found, what he told me was that of the very, very few people over the decades that this study was done in Europe, there's only about 50 people who actually had this. But of those people, the 5 year survival rate was as high as 94%. So if I really did have this, like my mom suspected, then I would almost be in the clear. Now, when he told me this, I thought, why the hell are you like rubbing this in my face? I don't care about this study from Europe because I don't have that. I have it in the bone. It's like completely spread everywhere properly, probably. But he told me that. He said, and he even said, I don't know. This could just be the tip of the iceberg, like he even said. So we did. We just basically, I was admitted into the hospital because they knew I would need a chemotherapy port and basically start chemotherapy ASAP. I got all the scans done. I got a PET scan, CT scan, all of it. So I was being walked up at that point to the pediatric ward. I met all the nurses and I got a little room.
It
Had a
was
nice,
actually a pretty big room.
yeah. There was even a little exercise bicycle. I was very excited about that. And I even took some photos in a video when I still had hair. And yeah, so there was of course a lot of scans. there was first a scan of my heart. Then they did a scan of my lungs. Then there were PT and CT scans. Now I can probably talk about those scans in another, the like details of the scans in another video, or better yet, there's a lot of good like videos from medical authorities about those types of scans. So basically, after those scans, I basically just rested. I don't think I got any sleep, and I woke up and early in the morning I was wheeled into the surgery room where they basically put the chemotherapy port in. And right when I got back from getting my port placed in, the doctor, two of my doctors, I actually technically have four oncology doctors. Two of them came in and they just, checked up on the after the surgery. And right after they left, the my main doctor, I guess you could say the one who called on March 12th. Yeah, March 13th. It was actually that morning. Um, he came back in with the results of the scan, and they had found for a fact that it wasn't in the bone, and it wasn't even like wherever it was low, like just slightly above what is needed to be considered like, yeah, that's cancer. So it's based off of metabolic activity. It was just slightly above the threshold. So not only was it not in the bone, it wasn't that
Very
much
active.
very active basically. I was thrilled. That means I was in that incredibly rare study. So Ewing sarcoma happens to base in the US 225 people a year. For context, for example, 40,000 people die from car accidents a year in the United States, and you'll later find out that that statistic scares me, but less, significantly less people get this one than, of course, Ewing sarcoma. So it's incredibly rare. Ewing sarcoma is already a rare cancer, and the fact that I got this subcutaneous kind, I still haven't been able to find any sort of metric about how common it is. Ewing sarcoma is one in about 1.3 million people. I can't imagine what this is. My mom loves to say one in a billion, so let's say it's one in a billion. Yeah. So, basically, great news. Chances are you never want to be too cautious, but chances are I'm gonna live. At the time we thought, okay, I'm gonna live. And we later learned that this cancer doesn't usually reoccur and, become, like, for example, metastatic and these things. It doesn't usually. And it spreads slowly. So the fact that it spread that I had this kind basically saved me from how incredibly long it was from probably it forming and me actually getting it removed or actually just getting diagnosed. So it forming and diagnosed was such a long time, and this always scares us when we think about it. If I had typical Ewing sarcoma that started in my bone and it really presented itself the same exact way, by the time I was diagnosed, who knows how far along it could have
At
been.
that point, I mean, usually it takes like
Months.
weeks to months for regular Ewing sarcoma to metastasize once it begins. So at that point, it would have been certain that he had like stage 4 or something. So at that point, like before we found out, before we got the PET scans or anything, I was like, damn, it's pretty likely that it's metastasized from what I knew and from all the stuff I saw online. So yeah, I mean, we're just beyond lucky, and beyond unlucky,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
that you know, this happened. So
Exactly. So basically that, and then I got basically I got my chemotherapy port March 14th at like 9 a.m. I think even 10 a.m. I think the exact date or time is somewhere. And that night I got my first round of chemotherapy. It I wish I can remember exactly which one it was. It wasn't doxorubicin, it wasn't. So I believe it was it was vincristine and
Yeah,
cyclophosphamide.
that sounds
Yeah. So that's what it was. So I got those. The nurses, just everyone, all of the nurses, so kind, so caring. We're sad that it happened, but we're glad that we got to this hospital. The nurse, we took photos, took a video. The nurse even prayed. Very, just very kind. And yeah, that was my first dose of chemotherapy. There's a lot more to tell about this story, but that's basically just, I mean, if you can believe it, I got diagnosed March 11th, Hopkins' birthday. I didn't know that. I was a fan of Hopkins, the Animal Crossing character, long before that, like probably maybe a year before that, or maybe just like 6 months before. And I never looked at his birthday. I always knew that it was the same day as Zipper or whatever, but I never thought about, oh, okay, it's March 11th. I never considered that. And like a couple weeks ago, I was watching a video and someone was like, "We all know that Hopkins' birthday is March 11th," and I was like, God, that's when I got diagnosed with cancer. Like I was sitting there thinking I'm gonna die, and this blue rabbit is celebrating his birthday. My favorite. So, yeah, that's just funny. But so from March 11th, then to March 14th, I was already getting chemotherapy. So, yeah, so there's a lot more to tell about this story. There's a lot more other things that I'm gonna post on here. I don't just have to talk about cancer. I'm gonna post, like you heard me talk about Animal Crossing. I'm gonna post videos of me playing Animal Crossing Wild World because that's the easiest to record, and I haven't played it yet. So, yeah, if there's anything you want to say,
yeah, I just wanted to say, like, although, like, it was an incredibly difficult time for us, especially Dylan. There were a lot of, there's always a silver lining, to situations. Like, there were just some really great things that happened. Not, you know, Dylan getting diagnosed wasn't one of them, but a lot of people that we haven't spoken to in a long time reached out. Some people that we lost touch with reached out, and those are, I think, your true friends, the ones that come to you during a difficult time and actually, show their support. There were some people that we were, still friends with, and they reached out. There were people that we were friends with, and they did not reach out. And there were people that we haven't spoken to in
like
months,
years,
years,
like
and
since middle
yeah,
school.
middle school, and they reached out, and now we are in close touch, and that's really important. You can't go through this stuff alone. You just can't do this alone. It's incredibly difficult as it is, and to go through it alone would just be incredibly challenging. So, just the companionship and camaraderie that Dylan has received is just incredibly important, and we're both really grateful for that.
Yeah,
Um, so yeah, I just want to say thank you for listening to my brother and listening to me. Um, I just I wanted to just be here with my brother while he tells you, this isn't easy to talk about, but it's his story. So I was just here to, just kind of just listen and
yeah,
just be there for him. So
yeah,
yeah, that's why I
yeah,
was kind of sitting there. So yeah, once again, thank you for
yeah.
watching.
Thank you.
So yeah, okay, I'll let you say the finishing words for this video.
Yeah. So thank you all for watching. definitely the next thing I'll post is that Animal Crossing Wild World Let's Play. And yeah, I'll definitely, of course, more importantly, I'll start talking about, some of the things that I've actually went through and just my thoughts on this experience. Because I'm not happy I got cancer, but I think I've learned a lot of things from it.
A lot
So,
of important lessons.
yeah. So, that's all. Thank you for watching.